We've had George Clooney, Christian Bale, Michael Keaton. I don't know who else was in Batman.
Take it off, Val. It's Val Kilmer.
Oh, yeah.
I gotcha.
You did.
It's my trick.
Yeah.
No one ever gets it.
Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today I'll be talking about Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. Okay, so to preface this video, back in 2023, during the month of my birthday, I decided to treat myself and get the 4K DVD of The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, a movie that I absolutely love. And I was like, you know what? It would be kind of fun to do a rewatch of all the Batman movies, or at least the Batman movies that I grew up with, starting with Tim Burton's '89 Batman, going to Batman Returns, then the Schumacher Batman movies, and then the Nolan Batman movies, skip over the Ben Affleck Batman movies because I simply don't care, and then going right into the Batman. Just as kind of a fun little experiment that I've never done before, watching all those Batman movies in chronological order. And so along with my purchase of this DVD, I also decided to get this because I didn't own the Schumacher Batman movies and I would get to update my Burton Batman movies to Blu-ray. And I hadn't seen the Schumacher Batman movies since I was like 12 years old. I've rewatched the Burton Batman movies throughout the years pretty consistently. In fact, I have videos talking about both of those films on this channel for anyone interested. I'll link them in the description below. I remember enjoying the Schumacher Batman movies as a kid, but I just hadn't seen them since. And I was aware of the reputation that the films have garnered as being two of the worst Batman movies. And I'm also aware that these movies have gotten some sort of reappraisal with some Batman fans, defending both of these movies. Either way, I was kind of looking forward to watching these movies and seeing whether or not they were as fun as I remembered as a kid, or whether or not I thought they were going to be terrible based on the reputation that they've garnered throughout the years. And yeah, they were both pretty bad movies amongst that rewatch back in 2023. Batman Forever was definitely the better movie, but both movies suffered from being super, not just campy, but just like irritating. And they're movies that I say are tailor-made for annoying 7-year-old kids. That's the demographic for these movies. And they're such a major downgrade from the Burton movies, in my opinion, but I'll get more into that a little later in the video. So fast forward to yesterday, where I was originally just going to rewatch Batman Forever as part of my Val Kilmer retrospective, which started with my review of Real Genius that I did just a week or two ago. And I was just going to rewatch that movie, talk about Val Kilmer in that movie, and talk about kind of the weird and bizarre things about Batman Forever that I found kind of interesting, that I also thought were really quite bad. But then something happened. I got about 50 minutes into the movie and I turned it off. I got so annoyed, so irritated. I was getting a headache. I was like, you know what? I just don't like this movie. I don't like Batman and Robin. I'm not going to force myself to rewatch these movies again. So I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do instead. Instead of just focusing on Batman Forever, I'm going to talk about why the Joel Schumacher Batman movies are terrible, and why the Burton Batman movies are significantly better in every conceivable way. And I'm just going to be comparing these two eras of Batman because I think they're really interesting in the history of cinematic Batman. So for the Joel Schumacher Batman fans out there, if you don't want to hear anybody criticize those films, I recommend clicking off this video now, because I am not going to pull any punches. These movies fucking suck.
Didn't you apologize to the crowd at Comic-Con for Batman and Robin?
I always apologize for Batman.
I think most Batman fans are aware now that Joel Schumacher ended up taking over the role of directing the next two Batman movies because of the controversy that was surrounded with Batman Returns. Batman Returns had a tie-in with McDonald's, and when the movie came out, critics and parents and I guess children who were traumatized by the experience of watching this movie.
Some parents contend that Batman Returns, which is rated PG-13, is actually being marketed for younger children, and the movie is just too violent.
It was very violent. It was total attack against kids.
Just wanted to point out here that kids don't talk like this, and clearly an adult, a parent, or a producer told this kid to say this movie was a total attack on kids. Everybody thought that the film was too dark, too creepy, too sexual for kids. And that it was a terrible decision for Warner Brothers to have a tie-in campaign with Batman Returns and McDonald's and all of that stuff. I mentioned in my original review of Batman Returns, which I've done for this channel, which I'll link in the description below, I mentioned that while, yes, I will agree Batman Returns is not a kid's movie, and neither is the first 89 Batman film, I do mention that Batman Returns is really not that much darker than Burton's first Batman movie. I mean, yes, it is certainly a bit stranger. It's a bit more Tim Burton-esque. I've always maintained that Batman Forever is more of a Tim Burton movie than it is an outright Batman movie, but that's why I enjoy it. It's something really different and unique, and I just feel like Tim Burton's gothic aesthetic is really well suited for the world of Batman. The movie really isn't that much darker than the first Batman movie, which apparently everybody loved. Everybody loved it. Kids loved it. Critics loved it. It was a huge success, that 89 Batman movie. But when Batman Returns came out, I guess people thought the movie went a little too far. Time has been quite kind to Batman Returns. It is kind of the cult favorite of a lot of Batman fans out there. It is a lot of people's favorite Batman movie. In fact, Robert Pattinson said it's his personal favorite Batman movie. It's one of my favorite Batman movies. And for anyone who wants to hear my thoughts, like I said, I'll link the description to my video below, but I absolutely love both Batman Returns and Batman 89, but I think Batman Returns is my favorite of Tim Burton's films. So Tim Burton was originally going to do Batman 3. He was going to conclude his trilogy of Batman movies, but after the controversy with Batman Returns, Warner Brothers is like, you know what, we're going to take this in a different direction. We want these movies to be more kid-friendly, more importantly, advertiser-friendly, which I'm going to get into.
Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir?
I'll get drive-through. Introducing McDonald's Superhero Burger.
And we're going to bring in a different director, Joel Schumacher. Now, I learned while prepping for this video that Michael Keaton was toying with the idea of doing the third Batman movie with Joel Schumacher, but after an interview with him and Warner Brothers and hearing the direction that they wanted to take Batman, he was like, you know what? I'm going to walk away. I'm not interested in this. He probably walked away from a lot of money to do that. But he was like, the dark and complex elements of Batman is what makes Batman interesting as a character. That's why I wanted to play him in the first place. And you guys wanted to take all that away. I'm not interested. You should find somebody else. So that's when Val Kilmer steps in. And then from there, you know, the studio wanted Jim Carrey to play the Riddler because this was in 95. And just the year before, Jim Carrey was the biggest thing in the world with movies like Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, and The Mask. I think all three of those movies came out in the same year. So he was the hottest thing on the planet, definitely the biggest like movie star at the time. Got to throw him in the movie as the Riddler. And because Tommy Lee Jones worked with Joel Schumacher on the movie The Client, he's like, oh, let's bring in Tommy Lee Jones. He can be Two-Face. And the result is a movie that is incredibly tonally confused. Part of the movie wants to be a serious character study of Batman and specifically Bruce Wayne and dissecting his trauma of his parents dying at a young age that resulted in him becoming Batman later on. Part of the movie wants to be that. And then the other part of the movie, most of the movie, wants to be a really loud, obnoxious kids movie that has the visual aesthetic of a toy commercial filmed inside a laser tag arena. That's the aesthetic that I describe the Joel Schumacher films. Films that are more focused on making Batman more of a kid figure, even though that there is a lot of sex stuff in Batman Forever, especially regarding the relationship between Batman and Nicole Kidman, who is the psychiatrist Chase Meridian, who's a character that's kind of the embodiment of the tonal inconsistency that is Batman Forever, because when Batman is around, she turns into a campy, corny sex freak that is absolutely obsessed with Batman.
Black rubber.
And then when Batman is not around and it's Bruce Wayne, she turns into a professional psychologist. And her character is totally like, what? Horribly written, horribly acted. It's not Nicole Kidman's fault. None of the performances is really any of the actors' fault. It's a result of a studio machine and Joel Schumacher getting these ridiculous performances from these characters. Batman Forever gets praise. for Val Kilmer's performance. Now, here's the problem. I have difficulty giving Val Kilmer's performance praise in this movie because the film does everything to stifle him in this film. Val Kilmer's clearly in a different movie than everybody else is in Batman Forever, where he's taking the role seriously. He wants to portray the tortured aspect of Bruce Wayne's character in a way that is sincere, in a way that feels genuine, while everything else surrounding that wants to be a toy commercial and a cartoon special. And the tones don't work at all, obviously. And because so much of this movie was left on the cutting room floor, I think the original cut of this movie was something like 3 hours long. They ended up cutting out like some 50 odd minutes. There's been rumors that really started with Kevin Smith saying that he saw like a director's cut of Batman Forever that is much more darker, that is a lot better than the theatrical version, and that, you know, because of the whole Zack Snyder thing and him releasing his director's cut, all the Batman fans were like, release the Joel Schumacher cut. I would be interested to see that version of the movie. I kind of doubt that a 3-hour version of Batman Forever would make it a better movie, but that's just my opinion. But we do know, because of some of the deleted scenes that are featured on the DVD of Batman Forever, that a lot of the stuff that was left on the cutting room floor was the characterization of Bruce Wayne, some sort of side plot revolving around him having amnesia, revolving the death of his parents and him blaming himself for that, and just kind of an interesting ideas. I don't know if they completely work or not, but interesting ideas that clearly were targeted towards a more mature Batman movie, more mature than the one we ended up getting. And Val Kilmer just doesn't really have a time to shine in Batman Forever. There's only one scene where he really kind of stands out and his dramatic performance works really well. It's very brief. It's the scene where Batman is talking to Chris O'Donnell, Dick Grayson, about him wanting to get revenge on Two-Face for killing his family. And he has this monologue about why revenge is not the answer. That's actually a good scene, and Val Kilmer does a good job performing that scene.
It will happen this way. You make the kill. But your pain doesn't die with Harvey, it grows. So you run out into the night to find another face.
But everything else outside of that, I mean, Val Kilmer's performance just comes off as a bit dull, as a bit lifeless. Totally, there's no charisma whatsoever. You compare that to Michael Keaton's performance as Batman, especially in the first Batman movie, where he has charisma, he has humor, he has charm, he has that Bruce Wayne playboy attitude, but he clearly also has the dark side that he portrays very well in that first Batman movie. Compare that with Val Kilmer in this movie, where he really doesn't have a time to shine due to the direction of the film, due to the conflicting tones of the film, due to the fact that probably a lot of his best dramatic performance of this movie was left on the cutting room floor. What you're left with is a guy who's like, my parents died, and I think it was my fault, and I remember there was a red book.
There's a new element now, though, I haven't seen before. It's a red leather book.
It's just like, it's really just like lifeless. It's a really, really dull performance, and that's clearly not his fault. Val Kilmer did not get along with Joel Schumacher in this movie. They were butting heads about how the character should be portrayed, and that's why Val Kilmer ended up not doing Batman and Robin, because neither of them wanted to work with each other again. But yeah, Batman Forever is the one that gets, you know, a lot of people tried to defend Batman Forever, but it's just too stupid. And then we get to like Tommy Lee Jones, whose performance is just as bad, maybe even worse than Arnold Schwarzenegger's performance as Mr. Freeze.
I hate Tommy Lee Jones in that movie.
Yes, that's the worst, probably villain performance in any comic book movie.
In any movie.
It is so fucking annoying and obnoxious and nonstop. And what's even stranger is that if you're going to have two Batman villains in a movie, there should be a contrast. They shouldn't be the same type of villain. And so when you have Jim Carrey's The Riddler, which I can't really blame Jim Carrey's performance in this movie because it's just Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey. He's being super ridiculous and cartoony, and he's obviously channeling like both his type of comedy with the tone of like the Adam West Batman with his version of the Riddler. Like, that's fine, whatever, but it's like, then have Two-Face be much more stoic, much more serious, much more intimidating in order to contrast with his version of the Riddler. Instead, we have two maniacal jackasses who are constantly screaming and yelling and telling terrible jokes, being the villains in this movie, and anytime they're on screen, which is a lot, it's just like, I want to turn off my brain and be like, oh God, I hate this. This is so annoying. I'm not a fan of Adam West Batman. I don't hate Adam West Batman. I can acknowledge his legacy in the history of Batman, and it's just not my thing whatsoever. I am of the belief, as most Batman fans are, that Batman is at his best when he's more dark, more mature, more noir-esque, which is one of the reasons why I absolutely love this movie right over here. And he's at his worst when he's being a kid's figure, because Batman being a superhero for kids, I don't know. He's just such a dark character that anytime you try to downplay any of that mature stuff, he just immediately becomes less interesting. And that's what you have with Batman Forever. And then when we go into Batman and Robin, where, you know, at least Batman Forever attempted to have some sort of character for Bruce Wayne and Batman and tried to explore the more dark and tortured aspects of that character. With Batman and Robin, it's like, all right, we're going to throw out all that stuff and we're going to double down on all of the stupid, dumb, campy bullshit, and we're going to make this movie feel even more like a toy commercial. And we're also going to double down on all of the bat nipples, the bat cod pieces, and the bat butt shots. Double everything. We're going to have Schwarzenegger constantly tell ice puns throughout this entire fucking movie, nonstop.
I'm afraid that my condition has left me cold to your pleas of mercy. Everything freezes. You are not sending me to the cooler. What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
The only performance that kind of works in Batman and Robin is Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy. Like, for whatever reason, her style of campy acting, it just fits the tone more than any of the other performances in this movie. George Clooney, his performance comes off like he just doesn't give a shit. He doesn't even care. Hey, Freeze, I'm Batman.
Hi, Freeze. I'm Batman.
There is no charisma. There is nothing. He is white bread. It is one of the blandest superhero performances in movie history.
George Clooney is acting like this is near the end of his career where he just doesn't care. But this is when he was a rising star, yet here he is, huge movie, phoning it in. Yeah. How weird is that?
I'm fine with his performance in this because nothing matters in this.
And then Chris O'Donnell, you know, it's more or less, his performance is more or less the same thing he was doing in Batman Forever, where he's like, you know what, Batman, you never trust me. And it's like, he's an obnoxious, angsty teenager, whatever. Alicia Silverstone is in Batman and Robin for some reason. I mean, the real reason is she was incredibly popular at the time, so the studio's like, throw her in the movie too. Throw all the popular people in this movie so we can make money. And that gets to the core of my hatred, because I do hate these Schumacher movies. I fucking hate them because, you know, learning about how these movies were made, learning about how the studio jumped in and totally controlled every aspect of this movie. The Schumacher Batman movies were essentially only made to sell merchandise. That is the number one goal of both of these films.
First movie, things felt much sharper and more focused, and it just felt like everything got a little softer on the second one. The first one, I felt like I was making a movie. The second one, I felt like I was making a toy commercial.
Batman and Robin. Ice Terror Mr. Freeze launches a chilling strike. Blast-wing Batman whips his massive cape to cut down the cold criminal. Now Robin comes with his Redbird cycle to put evil on ice as Batgirl blasts in to send Freeze to the cooler.
We involved the toy company. We let them look and be involved in how the Batmobile was going to look.
Then as Batman sliced through the streets of Gotham City in the incredible Batmobile.
A word I had never heard before. More toyetic. Which means that what you create makes toys that can sell.
That is completely made for merchandise purposes. That is the only reason that these Schumacher Batman movies exist. I can acknowledge that Joel Schumacher attempted to create his own version of Batman and Batman Forever, but the studio came in and were like, nope, cut out all that shit. Bring in more of the obnoxious kid campy shit. Bring in more of the Batmobiles that look like a stupid Hot Wheels car. We're going to turn that into a toy. We're going to sell it to kids.
The Super Soaker Batmobile and Batman Super Soaker from Laramie, each sold separately.
And that is the only reason for these movies, and that's why I can't stand them. Anyone who tries to defend the Schumacher movies and tries to push aside the fact that the studio clearly used these movies as big advertisements to sell bullshit to kids and Batman fans, I mean, the defenses I've heard of these movies are so, like, dude, give me a break. They're supposed to be campy. The movies are supposed to bring back the Adam West tone. And, you know, these movies are actually somewhat comic book accurate if you look at the golden age of Batman, which was much more lighthearted and silly. That doesn't take away the fact that at the end of the day, both of these movies were just big toy commercials. They were. Batman and Robin more so. Batman Forever not as much, but it got totally co-opted by greedy studio meddling that just wanted to sell it to kids. They couldn't give a shit about the quality of the filmmaking, about the quality of the storytelling, of the performances, of giving Batman some rich and complex themes. They couldn't give a shit about any of that. Cut all that out. Bring in more fun, ridiculous Batman stuff. Bring in toy executives. This is true on Batman and Robin. They actually brought in toy executives to help with the production design of like the Batman suits, the Batmobile, the look of the Batcave, the look of Robin and Batgirl and Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy, so we can sell more toys. That's why these movies suck. Everything from the Burton Batman movies to the Schumacher movies, everything is a massive downgrade. From the visual aesthetic, I mean, Batman Returns in particular is one of the most gorgeous looking superhero movies, even by today's standards. It looks incredible. From the score, Danny Elfman's score, which is the best Batman score, I don't care what anybody says, to the bullshit scores in Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. It's terrible. It's so bad in comparison to Danny Elfman's amazing score. And Tim Burton is one of those filmmakers that has a distinct vision, and he has a distinct artistic stamp on his movies, which makes me respect him a lot as a filmmaker, even though I think in recent years he's completely fallen off. But early Tim Burton, in his prime, was a really unique and interesting filmmaker. And while, yes, I will acknowledge that his Batman movies aren't necessarily the most accurate in terms of representing or adapting Batman's universe, his weird gothic style was a much better fit for the character than whatever Joel Schumacher was trying to do in terms of trying to make Batman more of a kid-friendly character. Tim Burton's idea of Batman makes much more sense, and his visual sensibilities make those Batman movies that he did almost stand the test of time, really. Especially with Batman Returns. I mean, there are elements of 89 Batman that haven't aged great, but in terms of Batman Returns, that movie still looks amazing. The performances are still incredibly memorable, especially that of Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, who's still the best Catwoman. I mean, those movies have aged so much better than the Schumacher Batman movies. But yeah, that's my thoughts on those films. But I want to hear from you guys, especially the Batman fans. When it comes to Tim Burton's Batman movies and Joel Schumacher's Batman movies, which do you prefer? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Mention it in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching.